Part 154. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1531. After I came back from the underworld, I found that Su Tianqian had changed and she became very clingy to me. This change is a good thing, but in my opinion, Su Tianqian seems to cherish every minute and every second with me. Coupled with the fact that she had silver hair and often had nosebleeds, this made me realize that Su Tianqian must be hiding something from me. It would be difficult for me to know what I want to know from her, because I know her character. However, no matter what Su Tianqian is hiding from me, I will use my life to protect her, and it is not a bad idea to exchange my life for my life. Su Tianqian and I packed up and returned to Jiyuntang. Hua Xiu and Cai Dai looked at me and Su Tianqian with strange eyes. I smiled at them and said, "We are together, and we will go get the evidence later." Hearing these words, Cai Dai cheered, but Hua Xiu seemed worried. I came to her side and asked, "What's wrong?" Hua Xiu shook his head at me and replied, "It's nothing, I just thought of something." "What's the matter?" Hua Xiu glanced at Su Tianqian, who was being chased by Cai Dai and asking questions. Hua Xiu pulled me aside and whispered, "Brother, do you still remember what I told you about you and Sister Tianqian?" I was slightly startled, and suddenly I knew what Hua Xiu was referring to. In Hua Xiu's life, I was reincarnated as her brother, and Su Tianqian also appeared in that life. In that life, I was the emperor and Su Tianqian was the national counselor. Because of some things, Su Tianqian was infamous and was called a witch, but I killed Su Tianqian for the sake of the world. I nodded towards Hua Xiu and said, "I know. Brother, there is something I don't know if I should tell you." "You say." Hua Xiu sighed slightly and said, "Brother, you won't give up Sister Tianqian for the sake of the world in this life." This sentence made me freeze in place for a moment. I was silent for a long time and said in a hoarse voice, "I can't." Seeing my expression, Hua Xiu didn't say anything. He just patted me on the shoulder and said, "Brother, I believe you. My heart is extremely bitter. My 5 senses and limbs have been used to repair the sky coffin. I won't live much longer." Later, Su Tianqian and I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau with our household registration books. When Su Tianqian and I appeared in the Civil Affairs Bureau, we instantly attracted everyone's attention. Well, it wasn't me who attracted him, it was Su Tianqian. After what happened last night, Su Tianqian became more gentle and virtuous. To put it simply, she became more feminine. This made the already charming Su Tianqian even more stunning. Su Tianqian and I applied for a marriage certificate. The staff said they had never seen a couple that matched me and Su Tianqian so well. After taking the photo, not long after, 2 marriage certificates appeared in the hands of Su Tianqian and I. The staff member smiled at me and Su Tianqian and said, "You too, you must be happy in the future." I took Su Tianxian's hand and replied to the staff, "We will." After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, I stretched, looked at Su Tianqian, and said, "Honey, where are we going now?" The word wife made Su Tianqian tremble. She took my hand and said, "Go home." I nodded and returned to Jiyuntang with Su Tianqian. I told my third uncle about my affair with Su Tianqian. The third uncle was very happy after hearing this, and went directly to Jiyuntang in the evening. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1532. In the evening, Su Tianqian cooked a large table of dishes to entertain his third uncle. My third uncle and I sat opposite each other, eating and drinking. The third uncle looked at me and Su Tianqian with a smile on his face. "I knew you two could make it happen. Xiao Su, I can tell you. You must treat Xiaoxian well. Try to have a baby as soon as possible." I smiled at my third uncle and said, "Third uncle, you don't need to worry about this matter. I will treat her well." My third uncle and I drank, and Su Tianqian sat quietly aside. After 3 rounds of drinking, my third uncle and I talked more and more. Our uncle and nephew talked about a lot of things in the past. As we chatted, my third uncle and I fell into silence, just drinking. After a while, the third uncle said in a hoarse voice, "Xiao Su, I'm really happy to see you and Xiao Xian together. I think eldest brother, sister-in-law, and second brother will also be very happy." I didn't say anything, and third uncle continued, "Xiao Su, please promise third uncle that no matter what happens in the future, you will live well." I raised my head and said to my third uncle, "I will." I glanced at the empty wine bottle on the table and said to Su Tianqian, "Tianqian, there's no wine left. Go buy some." Su Tianqian nodded. Looking at Su Tianxuan's leaving figure, I said to my third uncle in a hoarse voice, "Third uncle, I'm afraid I won't live too long." I used my 5 senses and limbs to repair the sky coffin. The third uncle's hand holding the wine glass trembled slightly. He took a sip of wine and said to me, "Xiao Su, have you still made this decision?" I nodded and said, "There has to be someone who has to bear this, third uncle. I have only told you these words because you are my elder, and I will only bear them in front of you and Tianqian all the burdens, but I can't tell Tianqian so much." Third uncle put down his wine glass, stood up, sat next to me, gently put his arm around my shoulders, and said, "Xiao Su, third uncle understands you. Third uncle will not object to your choice, but it only hurts Xiao Xian." "Yes, third uncle, so I plan to leave quietly after everything is over, so, third uncle, you can tell Tianqian this matter." The third uncle burst into tears. He hugged me and said in a choked voice, "Xiao Su, my nephew. The third uncle really doesn't want to see you leave." The emotions in my heart were aroused, and I hugged my third uncle and cried, "Third uncle, I don't want to leave, I really don't want to leave, but, I have no choice." I held my third uncle and cried for a long time, because apart from Su Tianqian, my third uncle was the only person I could talk to. The third uncle stroked my face with his big rough hands and said in a hoarse voice, "Xiao Su, promise the third uncle that if you really want to leave, you must tell the third uncle." I nodded heavily. Then, the third uncle left, and after a while, Su Tianqian came back, still carrying the wine he just bought. "Where's the third uncle?" Su Tianqian asked. "Left already." Su Tianqian sat next to me, looked into my red eyes, and asked, "Xiao Su, are you crying?" I nodded and replied, "Well, I just talked about my parents with my third uncle and couldn't hold it back." Su Tianqian hugged me gently without saying a word, using this way to comfort me. I don't know how long it took, but the door of Ji Yuntang suddenly opened, and a gust of evil wind came. Sudaji stood at the door and looked at me quietly. I stood up slowly, knowing that the short-term peace was over, and I would face the final storm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1533. I looked at Sudaji and said, "Come in." Sudaji nodded and walked into Ji Yun Hall. I, Su Tianqian, and Sudaji are sitting on the sofa in the lobby on the first floor. Previously, Ji Yuntang only had one 8 Immortals table and 2 8 Immortals chairs, so the entire hall on the first floor looked empty. This sofa was bought by Cai Dai after she persuaded Su Tianqian to act coquettishly. In Cai Dai's words, it was comfortable to lie on it and play games. I asked Sudaji, "When will we set off?" Sudaji replied, "Tomorrow, I will not go with you on this trip to Tishan. Because Tishan and I have some grudges, so you can only go and retrieve my 3 tails." Sudaji had told me about this matter a long time ago. I nodded and said, "I know about this matter." Since you and I choose to cooperate, then I will definitely help you find these 3 tails. But you must do what you promised me. Sudaji covered her mouth and smiled coquettishly. Keek, don't worry, Sudaji, want to speak to you. I sneered in my heart, the fox is very cunning, how could I completely trust her? Sudaji continued, it is not difficult to obtain my 3 tails. Something has happened to Empress Tushan. If you can solve that matter, if Xiong Tushan asks for my 3 tails, Tushan will definitely agree. But Sudaji's face turned extremely serious, and she said, but you have to be careful about the gods. I was slightly startled and asked with some confusion, am I careful about the gods? Aren't they sealed in the tomb of the gods? Sudaji explained, the gods already know what you did in the underworld and they have decided to attack you and the remaining 9 evil stars. Hearing this sentence, I felt a chill in my heart. I have now destroyed the 9 evils and the 6 evils. Except for Sudaji, Huokyubing, and the last evil, all the other evils have returned to the palace. The reason why the gods did not attack me before was because they wanted to use my hand to open up the gods' mound. To put it simply, I was asked to work for them as a tool. And now the gods are going to attack me and the remaining 3 evil spirits, which means that the gods are getting anxious. They are afraid that after I get the 9 evil spirits, I will completely seal the tomb of the gods, so that they cannot leave. Zhao Mian told me about this. The 9 evil stars and the sky coffin can completely seal the tombs of the gods. As long as the seal is sealed, there is no way to open it. Sudaji looked at Su Tianqian and said, of course, there is her. I nodded and said, I understand, but I have a question. In what capacity will they lead the world? Sudaji was silent for a moment and replied, I don't know about this matter, it may be reincarnation or a remnant soul. In short, just be careful. The gods are in the tombs of the gods, and only their remaining souls can leave. And the underworld is controlled by the gods, and it is completely okay for those gods to reincarnate with a wisp of their remaining souls. Maybe the gods had already made this plan decades ago and had sent gods to reincarnate. Thinking of this, I sighed secretly in my heart. It seems that the road ahead will not be so easy. Sudaji stood up and said, I've said everything that needs to be said. Okay, I'm going to do my thing. I nodded. Sudaji slowly opened her palms, and then a tuft of white fox fur appeared in her hands. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 1534. Lu Su, take this and be sure to keep it, because only in this way can I know where you are. If something happens to me, I will notify you as soon as possible. In the same way, if you are in any danger, I will also know as soon as possible. I took the fox fur and nodded towards Sudaji. Sudaji turned around and left, and I felt particularly solemn as I watched Sudaji's leaving figure. Su Tianqian, and the 3 evil spirits have all become targets of being hunted by the gods. Perhaps the real reason why Sudaji cooperated with me was the threat from the gods. After all, it is almost impossible for her to survive the pursuit of the gods with her own strength. In this way, Huokyubing also faces the same threat. I looked at Su Tianqian and asked, Tianqian, do you think, could the gods have been reincarnated with a ray of soul and hidden in this world just for this moment? Su Tianqian pondered for a moment and said, it's very possible. We have to be careful. Maybe someone in the Feng Shui world is the incarnation or clone of the gods. A remnant soul of a deity can be reincarnated, because the 3 souls and 7 souls of a deity are not comparable to ordinary people. For example, Laozi transformed the 3 pure beings into 1 Qi. These 3 pure beings are Tais Hanglajun, Yuanqi Tianzun, and Lingbao Daijun. To give the simplest example, that is Zhao Mian. He was condensed by my evil thoughts. In other words, the evil thoughts evolved into a new 3 souls and 7 souls. It is just the incarnation of a god and will eventually return to the original body. I sighed slightly, took Su Tianxuan's hand, and said with a smile, Tianxian, it's so late, do you think it's time for us to go to bed? Su Tianxian was stunned for a moment, then her pretty face turned red. She gave me a fierce look and said, you can sleep, but you are not allowed to do that to me. Ah! I looked at Su Tianxian dumbfounded, not understanding what she meant. The two of us had already done that yesterday, why is it not allowed now? Su Tianxian saw my doubts, snorted, gave me a hard look, turned and left. Looking at Su Tianxuan's staggering steps, I understood what was going on. I stretched out my hand and patted my head, and said helplessly, Lu Su, why do you act like an idiot sometimes? I went back to the bathroom to wash up, and then returned to the bedroom. Su Tianxian was already lying on the bed wearing a nightgown. I lifted up the quilt and got into bed. Tianxian, go to sleep, we have to get up early tomorrow. Su Tianxian put down the book in his hand, turned off the nightlight, and turned his back to me. I stretched out my hand and gently hugged her slender waist, and said, Tianxian, we are an old married couple, why are you still so shy? Su Tianxian didn't speak, just turned around and gently buried his little head in my arms. Just like that, I hugged Su Tianxian and quickly fell asleep. Early the next morning, Su Tianxian and I packed up and planned to go to Tishan. Cai Dai and Huaxiu originally went together, but I refused. Now I push the people around me as far away as possible because I don't know if the gods will attack the people around me. Before going to Tishan, I still have to look for Qin Fenglin, because I have promised him to find a marriage for his unborn grandson. Su Tianxian and I came to the white shop and knocked twice. After a while, the door opened and Qin Fenglin appeared in front of me. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1535. Brother Lu. Why are you here? Qin Fenglin said in surprise. I smiled and said, Brother Qin, I came to you today just to tell you that I will set off to Tishan to find a match for your unborn grandson. Qin Fenglin was stunned for a moment when he heard what I said. Then he held my hand with some excitement and said, Brother Lu is such a great kindness. How can I repay you by calling me brother? If it weren't for you, Brother Lu, I really don't know what to do with this matter. Seeing how excited Qin Fenglin was, I said, Brother Qin, your unborn grandson is destined to be with me. Maybe I will need his help in the future. So, helping you also helps me. I am indeed destined to be Qin Fenglin's grandson, but I am completely blind as to whether he can help me in the future, because Qin Fenglin will not feel at ease if I don't say so. Brother Lu, please stop talking. As far as our Qin family is concerned, you are our savior. If we need our Qin family's help for anything in the future, our Qin family will definitely go through fire and water, no matter what. Good. Qin Fenglin originally wanted to invite us to sit in the house, but Su Tianxian and I refused. The matter of going to Tishan cannot be delayed any longer. Saying goodbye to Qin Fenglin, Su Tianxian and I set off on the road to Tishan. Tishan has a long history and is the birthplace of the Tishan clan. It is opposite Jingshan Mountain in the Huihe River area and is famous for the Tishan clan and Deu. I don't know its specific location, but Su Tianxian has been there, which saved a lot of time and effort. I drove Su Tianxuan's luxury car to the train station, parked the car, and then entered the station with Su Tianxian. If you drive to Tishan, it will take you a day and a night, which is not only tiring, but also takes a long time. I originally thought about taking a flight, but after checking, I found that there are no direct flights, nor high-speed rail, so I can only take the train. If I leave now, I will arrive in the evening. Su Tianxian and I were sitting in the waiting hall. Su Tianxian leaned on my shoulder and closed his eyes to relax. There were many pedestrians coming and going in the waiting hall, including students and workers. Su Tianqian attracted the attention of many people just by sitting next to me. Su Tianqian slowly opened his eyes and asked softly, "Xiao Su, are you hungry? How about we go get something to eat?" I looked at the time and saw that there was still some time before the train left. I nodded and said, "Okay." Later, Su Tianqian and I went to a restaurant and ordered some food to prepare for dinner. At this moment, I suddenly saw a familiar figure. The man was standing outside the restaurant, wearing casual clothes and a peaked cap. "It's Zhao Mian." "Tianqian, I'm going to the bathroom." Su Tianqian nodded. I walked towards the outside of the restaurant. Zhao Mian saw me leaving and left quietly. After a while, Zhao Mian and I were sitting in the rest area. I looked him up and down and said, "Being a train, you are so well disguised, aren't you afraid of being regarded as a thief?" Zhao Mian laughed and said, "If I didn't pretend, wouldn't it look weird when we stand together?" Zhao Mian and I look exactly the same, with very different bodies, but different temperaments. When people see them, they say they are twins. There are many people who look alike in this world. Zhao Mian was slightly startled and said with great disgust, "I don't want others to think that you and I are twins." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1536. I smiled and said nothing. Zhao Mian's expression suddenly became extremely serious, and he said to me, "Lu Su, someone is following you." I was slightly startled and asked, "Who?" Zhao Mian glanced at me and replied, "I don't know either, but I can be sure that that person wants your life." I nodded, leaned back on the seat, and said, "I didn't expect the gods would take action so quickly, without giving them any chance to breathe." Zhao Mian stood up and walked straight towards the massage chair not far away. He lay down, waved to me, took out his mobile phone, scanned the QR code, and then massaged. Seeing how relaxed he was, the corner of my mouth twitched slightly. He showed a look of enjoyment on his face and said, "Time is running out. If you are in a hurry, the gods are also in a hurry. I know you are in a hurry, but don't be in a hurry. Lie down and have a good massage first." I looked at him speechlessly and said, "I really can't understand how you can still be so calm when things get to this point." Zhao Mian glanced at me lightly and said, "There is no solution if you are anxious. Now that the gods are attacking you, what you have to do is to collect the remaining 3 evil spirits and open the tomb of the gods." I sat next to Zhao Mian and asked, "Why do you want to open the tomb of the gods? Didn't you say before that you can seal the tomb of the gods with the help of the 9 evil stars and the sky coffin?" "I have said it before, but even if you seal the gods, the matter will not be solved. As long as the gods exist, the greed in their hearts will not be wiped out. Only by killing the gods and eradicating the roots can the problem be fundamentally solved." Zhao Mian's words stopped and he suddenly sat up. At this time, a little boy walked past him. "Hey! Little brat! Come here." The little boy was frightened and came to Zhao Mian timidly and said, "Brother, what can I do for you? Are you afraid of me?" The little boy subconsciously took a step back. Zhao Mian took out a $100 bill from his pocket and threw it on the little boy, saying, "Go buy me a bottle of water, and you can use the rest as a tip." The little boy picked up the $100 bill and was startled for a moment, then his face lit up and he turned to leave. "Little brat!" Zhao Mian shouted again. The little boy turned his head, looked at Zhao Mian doubtfully, and asked, "Brother, is there anything else? Don't call me big brother, call me handsome boy." "Handsome guy." The little boy shouted obediently. Zhao Mian waved his hand, signaling the little boy to leave. Seeing this scene, the corners of my eyes twitched slightly. This Zhao Mian is really unruly. He lay back on the massage chair and continued, "You have to know one thing. Although the tomb of the gods is sealed by borrowing the power of the sky coffin and the 9 evil stars, it actually requires you to seal it with your life. God killer, you still have a glimmer of hope. You can't let Su Tianqian remain a widow, can you?" I smiled bitterly and said, "Whether it's sealing or killing gods, I will die." Zhao Mian shrugged helplessly and said, "It's up to you. You and I are only temporarily cooperating. My plan is to kill gods. If you don't comply, we can only part ways. By then, you and I will still be enemies. In order to complete my plan, I can give anything, including you and Su Tianqian." Zhao Mian's words were somewhat threatening. In fact, only Zhu Shaxing and Su Tianqian can open the tomb of the gods. If I don't agree with his plan, he will definitely attack me and Su Tianqian. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1537. Working with Zhao Mian is completely like dancing with wolves. But now I have no other choice. If I don't cooperate with Zhao Mian, I won't be able to grasp the movements of the gods. Just like this time, I didn't know that the gods were following me at all. Zhao Mian breathed a sigh of relief and said, "By the way, there is one thing I forgot to tell you. It will be the birthday of old Fox Titian in a few days. At that time, all the immortal families will go to celebrate his birthday. You have to be careful, maybe there are some Shenji blended in and took this opportunity to attack you. Old Fox Titian should be said to be the father of Empress Titian." I nodded and replied, "Okay, I understand. The Titian clan is the most mysterious existence among the 4 fox clans. The foxes are originally from the immortal family, but I have never heard of anyone taking action for the Titian clan's foxes. Wait, I seem to have overlooked one thing. That was Lu Hangxuan. Ever since she came out of the underworld, Lu Hangxuan had gone to recuperate from her injuries. She has lived for thousands of years and logically she should also know the Titian clan's immortal family. When Titian is near, I will try to contact her. Maybe she can help me." While Zhao Mian and I were chatting, the child ran over excitedly, holding a bottle of drink in his hand. "Handsome guy, here you go, your drink." With that said, the child handed the drink in his hand to Zhao Mian. Zhao Mian sat up and reached out to take it, then looked the child up and down, and then said, "Where is the remaining money?" "No, here it is." The little boy took out the remaining money and said, "Handsome boy, I can't afford so much money, so I'll just take one piece and buy some candies." Zhao Mian snatched the banknotes from the little boy's hand, and then lay down on the massage chair again. "Go, go, go. What kind of candy can a little brat eat?" When the little boy heard these words, he immediately froze on the spot. He pointed at Zhao Mian and said, "Bad guy. You lied to me." Zhao Mian rolled his eyes and said, "Thank you for the compliment." The little boy was so angry that he stamped his feet on the spot. He shouted at Zhao Mian, "I told my mother to go." Zhao Mian curled his lips nonchalantly, not taking the little boy's words to heart at all. I said a little speechlessly, "You ask other children to run errands and you don't even pay $1. Please, I am a villain. Have you ever seen a villain who respects the old and loves the young?" Zhao Mian took a sip of the drink and said, "Okay, that's all I have to say. I will always be behind you. If you encounter something that cannot be solved, I will take action." I nodded, and just as I was about to speak, I heard a roar from behind. "Who bullied my son?" I followed the sound and saw a fat woman with a fleshy face walking towards me in an imposing manner. Sigh, it seems that Zhao Mian no longer wants to live in peace. I turned back to look at Zhao Mian, but I was immediately stunned. The massage chair is completely empty. Where is the shadow of Zhao Mian? At this time, the woman also came to me, grabbed my collar, and shouted angrily, "You are the one who bullied my son." The corner of my mouth twitched slightly, and I quickly said, "Auntie, it's not me." "Auntie," the middle-aged woman screamed at a high decibel level, "I am only in my 30s this year. You call me auntie." I quickly changed my words, "Sister. It's not me who bullies your son. It's..." The middle-aged woman asked sharply, "Who is it?" Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1538. I don't know. I replied quickly. At this time, I must not say it's Zhao Mian. Once I say Zhao Mian, it proves that my relationship with Zhao Mian is extraordinary. And now that Zhao Mian has run away, it's my turn to bear the anger of a middle-aged woman. I scolded Zhao Mian thousands of times in my heart. I don't know. My son is usually very well behaved, but you, a heartless person, dare to lie to him. I have to pull out your skin today. The middle-aged woman screamed at me, rolled up her sleeves, and threatened to cut me into pieces. No, no, no. Sister. Doesn't your son want to eat candy? I'll buy it for him. Do I need your piece of candy? The middle-aged woman was still reluctant, and just when she was about to reach out and scratch me, the little boy next to me suddenly said, "Mom, it's not this big brother, it's another one." The middle-aged woman glanced at her son, then let go of her hand, looked me up and down, and said, "Boy, I'm going to let you go today. If you let your friend bully the child, I will definitely pick him off your skin." I quickly nodded in agreement. This woman is a complete dominatrix. The little boy came to me and said, "Brother, you can't be like that bad guy. You have to be a good person. This kid is still very sensible." "Okay, big brother knows." Then, the middle-aged woman left with the little boy. Seeing this, I breathed a long sigh of relief. Damn Zhao Mian. I returned to the restaurant and Su Tianqian was sitting at the dining table quietly waiting for me to come back. I glanced at the table and the dishes I had just ordered were already being served, but Su Tianqian did not move his chopsticks. "What took so long?" Su Tianqian asked. I smiled and said, "I'm a little upset." As I said that, I was about to pick up the water on the table and take a sip. Su Tianqian quickly stopped him and said, "If you have a stomachache, don't drink cold water." With that said, Su Tianqian asked the waiter for a glass of hot water. My wife is so considerate. I smiled at Su Tianqian. Su Tianxian's pretty face turned red and she said nothing. Then, the two of us finished our meal and continued waiting for the bus. When checking in, Su Tianqian and I came to the ticket gate. I was just about to check my identity when I saw a figure in the corner of my eye. I was slightly stunned and looked towards that person. I saw that man standing not far away, wearing a cotton-padded jacket to cover himself tightly. It was just autumn and it was not particularly cold, but that guy was actually wearing such thick clothes and a mask on his face. It was very strange. Eccentric. Su Tianqian saw me frozen on the spot and asked, "Xiao Su, what's wrong?" I looked back at Su Tianqian and replied, "Nothing." I looked at the man again, only to find that the man had disappeared. This made me frown and have a bad feeling in my heart. Could it be that that man was the gods hiding in the dark? Now was not the time to think about that, because the train was about to leave. Su Tianqian and I checked our tickets and boarded the train. Su Tianqian and I bought sleeper berths, both of which were lower berths. Soon, the train started and slowly drove out of the train station. Su Tianqian sat next to me, her expression a little serious, and she said to me, "Xiao Su, come with me." I was slightly stunned, not knowing what Su Tianqian was going to do. Su Tianqian took me to the door of the carriage. She pointed to the door frame and said, "Xiao Su, look over there." I looked in the direction Su Tianqian pointed, and my brows immediately twisted into the character Sichuan. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 1539. There seemed to be something carved on the door frame of the train carriage. When I looked carefully, it turned out to be spells one after another. The magic spells come together to form a spell to suppress evil. An evil spell? Why is there an evil spell engraved on the carriage door? I looked at Su Tianxian and asked, this. Su Tianxian's expression became a little serious and he said to me, the reason why this train is engraved with an evil spell is because the train will pass through a place with extremely negative energy, so the evil spell is engraved on it to ward off evil spirits. I nodded, took Su Tianxian's hand, and said, okay, don't think too much. Even if this train really passes through such a gloomy place, if something strange happens, can't you and I still solve it? Su Tianxian glanced at me, then nodded, and returned to our seats with me. I took out my phone and searched for the stations this train would pass through. I always feel like something is going to happen on this trip, and I have to do something, so as not to be confused and at a loss after it happens. This train passed through many stations, and it stopped at one station for half an hour. My full attention was immediately focused on this site. This station is called Zawo Station. Wait for it, Zawo, Zawo. Why does this station have such a weird name? I searched for Zawo Station on Baidu. Seeing me fiddling with my phone, Su Tianxian came over curiously and asked softly, Xiao Su, what are you looking at? I smiled at Su Tianxian and said, search for something. Su Tianxian looked at the phone screen and asked with some confusion, Zawo Station? Why is the name of this station so weird? Who says it isn't? I swiped the screen to see if any supernatural events had happened at Zawo Station. I scrolled for a long time, but I couldn't find any useful information. Just as I was about to turn off my phone, Su Tianxian said from the side, add a few keywords behind Zawo Station, such as haunted or supernatural. I was slightly startled. Why didn't I think of that? Honey, you are so smart. Su Tianxian glanced at me, with shame flashing in his eyes. I finally discovered that as long as I call Su Tianxian my wife, she will be shy. I searched again according to the method Su Tianxian told me. This search didn't matter. As expected, I found some information. This Chuwo station was once haunted. About 3 years ago, our train also pulled into Zawo Station. The train stopped at the station for 30 minutes. During these 30 minutes, an extremely terrifying thing happened. According to the information I investigated, a monster with a human body and a pig face got on the train within these 30 minutes. No one noticed this monster at the beginning. When the train had just moved forward, the monster was on the train again. Open the killing ring. There were not many people riding the train that night, maybe about a dozen people. These dozen people, including the conductor, all died tragically in the train, and their bodies were chewed up in a shocking mess. This incident caused a lot of panic at the time. In order to reduce the negative news, the officials implemented a blockade and said that the train derailed and killed more than a dozen passengers. Looking at this information, I had a doubt in my mind, that is, the time I arrived at Zawo Station was 5:30 in the evening, and it was still dark, but why did the story happen at night? Although it is early autumn, it gets darker as we get closer to the south, so these stories on the internet are probably false. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 1540. Su Tianxian also saw the problem, and she said, Zawo Station is the penultimate station and has entered the Huihe River area. At this time of year, it gets dark relatively late in the Huihe River area, around 7 o'clock, and we will arrive at 5:30 Zawo Station. This story probably isn't true. I nodded, then put away my phone, and said to Su Tianxian, forget it, no matter how much investigation you do, it's useless. It's better to keep a normal attitude and make peace with what happened. You and I might as well enjoy the scenery along the way. Su Tianqian nodded slightly, said nothing, leaned on my shoulder and looked at the scenery outside. Gradually, Su Tianqian fell asleep leaning on my shoulder. I stretched out my hand and caressed Su Tianxuan's cheek. Su Tianqian seemed to be very tired recently. He often closed his eyes and sometimes fell asleep as soon as he closed his eyes. Su Tianqian has been very strange recently. She has silver threads, nosebleeds, and lethargy. What happened to her? Thinking of this, I stretched out my hand and gently placed my middle finger and index finger on her wrist, trying to feel her pulse while she was asleep. But as soon as my fingers touched her wrist, Su Tianqian suddenly opened his eyes and asked, "Xiao Su, what do you want to do?" Her tone was serious and she seemed angry. I quickly said, "I see that your wrist is beautiful, and I am thinking about buying you a bracelet to wear." Su Tianqian looked at me suspiciously and asked, "Really? Then there is still a holiday." Su Tianqian lowered his eyes and murmured, "Xiao Su, you know I don't care if you have these things or not. I only care that you can be by my side. As long as you are by my side, I can accept any kind of life." I smiled and said, "Silly wife, of course my husband will stay with you. He will buy these extraneous things for you. My woman must be the happiest existence in the world." Glib tongue. The corners of Su Tianxuan's mouth raised, revealing a slight smile. I sighed secretly in my heart. Su Tianqian must be hiding something from me. I know her character. Even if I ask, she refuses to tell. Therefore, I can only find out about this matter in the future. Time passed by minute, and soon it was 5 o'clock. I stood up, stretched, and asked, "Tianqian, are you thirsty?" Su Tianqian shook his head and replied, "I'm not thirsty." At this moment, a woman suddenly walked past the carriage corridor. My eyes were instantly attracted to this woman. It wasn't just how beautiful this woman was, but how strangely she dressed. The woman wears common clothes like a rural woman, with a black braid that hangs down to her waist. Under her black hair is a fair face. Su Tianqian also noticed this woman. She frowned and whispered, "Xiao Su, there is something wrong with this woman." As soon as he finished speaking, the woman hit the glass hard with her head. There was a crash, the glass shattered, and the woman jumped out of the window. I was shocked and quickly stood up to check. I came to the window and looked out, and a terrifying scene immediately caught my eye. The woman's long braid got entangled in the train wheels, and her thin body was dragged by the fast-moving train. The braid became more and more curled, and with a pop, the woman's scalp was torn off. Blood splattered all of a sudden. It was extremely terrifying.